Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monday, brought to you by Saving Grace Community Church and Grace House Cincinnati, a ministry and nonprofit agency of Saving Grace Community Church. Joining me once again is our resident expert, Dr. Quentin Moss, President, CEO, and founder of Modern Psychiatry. Good evening, my friend.
Hey, good evening. Great to be here again.
I see that it's been a long weekend for many of us. And the question is, has your bracket survived, Dr. Moss?
I'm glad I didn't start a bracket, man. I think I would have lost out. It was great to see Norfolk State, though, at least make a headway into the dance. So I was glad to see that.
All right, your alma mater. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're just a few days away from the beginning of April. Spring has already sprung. But April is National Autism Awareness Month. And tonight we have as our topic, our focus tonight will be children with autism. Dr. Moss, autism is one of those illnesses or disabilities, if you will, that is often misunderstood, and those that have this disability are often misunderstood as well. And so tonight, we want to bring clarity and understanding, and we want to do our part in making folks aware about this disability that infects 1 in 54 children in our nation. And according to a story released by CNN a couple of years ago, 2.2% of all Americans have autism, and 5.4 million people age 18 and older are 1 in 45, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, says have been afflicted with this disability. So don't hold us in suspense any longer, Dr. Moss. Tell us what is autism and what causes it?
You know, autism is a developmental disorder. Usually we catch this after a child turns the age of 2, but we can catch this in adolescence. This means diagnosing this. And we can also diagnose this in adults. Those are a little bit more difficult. So it's a cluster of symptoms, hence part of the reason why it's called a spectrum, condition. Primarily, people have struggles with engagement or communication. People struggle to pick up on social cues, have appropriate eye contact, be able to reciprocate, appropriate conversation. They may have an unusual tone of voice, and they may have difficulty interpreting the behaviors of other people. That's one part of it. Then another part of it is, restrictive or repetitive behaviors, where people may have, circumscribed interest. They may have stereotypical behaviors that repeat, that may be odd to others, or they may have difficulty being able to transition away from routines. Sometimes this can be associated with a great deal of anxiety, mood disturbance, sleep disturbance, but this is all on a spectrum, and it encompasses a group of conditions that we had looked at before, and now it's termed the autism spectrum disorder.
So has science determined a cause, or are there risk factors from this developmental disability happening?
This is a key point, because there's been a lot of debate about what causes autism, and we don't know. We have proven through studies that vaccines do not cause autism, right? And that's been a debate that's been around for about 20 years, but that's been disproven. What we can say is that, when we have mothers that are older, that places an increased risk.
Hmm.
When there are other developmental or genetic conditions, that also increases the risk. When there is a low birth weight, that also increases the risk for autism.
You say older mothers, what are we talking about? Because, everyone seems to, if they've not had a child, usually in the childbearing years, you go back historically, it started teenage, 20s and 30s, but now we have documented proof of folks having children in their 40s and their 50s and some in their 60s.
Yeah.
Uh, so, in the Bible, this is not an Abraham and Sarah thing for many people, because we know that how old Sarah was when she became a child. So when you say older mothers, what might be the cutoff point or the base, if you're willing to risk to say that, if it's safe to say that, an age where you might raise the risk or the chances or likelihood of you giving birth to someone who has this disability?
I don't know about a delineation as far as a specific age, but as we approach 40 and over 40, our risk for this and other conditions tends to increase in the offspring.
With this disorder, Dr. Moss, it sounds like many of the behaviors that manifest themselves with this disorder could mimic or mirror other disabilities. Are there some disabilities that come to mind that persons having this disorder may be mistaken of having something else? Or how effective are doctors in their initial and effective and accurate in their initial diagnoses?
Most of these things are picked up by the parent, the teacher, and sometimes the pediatrician. And then they may be referred to a speech pathologist, who then picks up and is able to make some certain clusters of the diagnoses, but most accurately with a child psychologist. And there are other things that look like this. There is a condition called Rhett's disorder, which looks a little bit like this. There's sometimes presentations with intense form of anxiety disorders that may look like this, as well as ADHD, because sometimes you can have pieces of those particular conditions, traits of those conditions, which can present look much like someone who has ASD.
Because the natural reaction to a child, once you have a child, you're counting the fingers, you're counting the toes, and
Right.
you're not really looking at your child to say, "Hey, look, I think they have autism." You just physically, you want to see if they follow light, if they can hear, but that's not something that often comes to your mind. And so it becomes reality once the diagnosis is made that it
Mhm.
is autism, and people have to make their adjustment to live dealing with this disability or developmental disorder. Here's one story of a young lady in which her diagnosis came to life, and we're able to see a picture of what it looks like living in a home where autism is present. This is called Malaya's story.
It's overwhelming. It's like having a part-time job that you really don't want, but you have to have. Malia was 3.5 when she was diagnosed with autism. I had heard of it, but didn't really have a good idea of what it was. I know I was kind of numb, and there was so much information coming at me at once that I probably did not take in everything. We pretty much follow the same schedule every day. We don't socialize. We don't have people over as much as we probably would. We don't go to picnics or barbecues or things. We pretty much stay ourselves. This is the type of disability that if you just look at Malia, you don't think anything's wrong with her. But then you might see her having a crisis where she's screaming or hitting or yelling, and then you think, well, what's wrong with her? I just feel like it's just a misconception because people don't understand. Parents that have kids on the spectrum, we are doing everything we can to make sure our kids succeed. We just want acceptance and understanding. and she's ornery on top of the autism. So I just feel like sometimes she just makes us laugh so hard. And I think people don't realize that kids on the spectrum have a sense of humor or a personality, and she really does. I would like to see her do something that makes her happy, do something that makes her enjoy life.
Joining us tonight, we are happy and we feel blessed to have Annette Dawson, who not only has one child who lives with autism, but she is the mother of two children that have been diagnosed having autism. Welcome to the show tonight, Annette.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Really appreciate you coming on tonight. Tell us a little bit about your family's life with autism.
Sure, and I'm gonna look down. I took some notes.
That's fine. That's fine.
I knew nothing about autism before everything happened with our family. Zero. I mean, obviously, I had heard of it. Typically, whatever you hear on movies or, just in general, I didn't know anything about it. So I did see a lot. My children are older now. My son is 18. My daughter's 17. So I'm taking you back quite a few years. I got diagnoses of ADHD, definitely. Oppositional disorder. Specifically, I saw things in my daughter first. I don't know if because she's my only daughter, but anxiety, they said she was a selective mutism. She chose to speak when she felt like speaking. She was very quiet with the majority of people. She was very selective who she spoke to, and what she spoke about was very selective. So if you didn't talk about what she wanted to talk about, it wasn't too much of an engagement she was going to give you. Sensory disorders, and the repetitive behavior. Those were things I saw in her right away. I was also pretty fixated on, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I didn't necessarily want to have tons of services if I didn't see the need there for those services. I felt like I wanted to manage everything on my own. When my daughter was a real difficult child for me. Specifically, when she started going to school, she would not go to preschool. She would not sit in the bus. It was too loud. She didn't know the teachers. She didn't know the bus driver. She didn't like the food. So she would go without eating. That was hard too. I always refer back that there was many times when I would sit, whether it was at an IEP meeting or with anybody, and I would say, if you just tell me what to do, I can do it. I can follow directions. Just tell me how to get my daughter to engage with someone besides me. Anybody. My mother, her grandmother, her other brothers, anything. Finally got a diagnosis after she had a huge breakdown at school. And the vice principal and the principal actually had to drive in my car with me to Children's Hospital at Liberty, and they wanted to keep her there. And my heart broke to have to walk away from my daughter and leave her in an unknown place with unknown people, knowing that she already struggled with those kind of things. But I did. I walked home, cried. I left my car there, cried all the way home. Just hoping that I was making the right decisions. But life was unmanageable at that point. I couldn't work. I was somewhat neglectful of my other children whose needs were not as grandiose, if you will. And my other son, who kind of fell through the cracks at our home as well. Children's Hospital, at College Hill. One of those meetings, they pulled me in, said, "Had you ever heard of actually PDD, a pervasive developmental disorder, which is on that spectrum?" Of course not. I knew nothing. And that kind of got the ball rolling. Hamilton had some great services with Health Now, who came into my house. Intensive therapy 2-3 times a week. They were able to provide us with an iPad to help her communication. Show me how to deal with those outbursts, which I found out later were just she couldn't communicate. She didn't know how to put into words the things that she was feeling. In that big rigmarole of everything going on, I was getting things back from the school with my son, who was not engaging, refused to speak in class. They wanted to hold him back. This was about 3rd grade, saying he's just too immature. He's not mature enough. But as things unfolded, he had the same issues, but they just come out differently. That one saying of if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. That's very true in our house. Even though they have the exact same diagnosis, they come forward in many different ways. I related a lot to that video. Our house was ran the exact same way every single day. They wake up at the same time. They eat the same foods. I could go to the Kroger's today. I can tell you exactly how much I'm going to spend because I know exactly what I have to buy. Those things have not changed. The clothes, I know exactly what to buy. The shoes, I know exactly what has to be bought. The socks, they have to have the certain kind of sock, or, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't fit the shoe right. Things of that nature. It was a hard time, but here we are, 18 and 17. They go to the school in Westchester. I'm drawing a blank because I'm a little nervous.
That's okay.
Applied Behavioral Services. It's an entirely autistic school, ran, thank goodness, by the Ohio Autism Grant. They pay for that school. They get all of their therapies while they're there, and it's year-round. They aren't interrupted by long summer breaks, long winter breaks that break up their schedules, that cause a lot of anxiety. My daughter, very outspoken now. She probably got that from me too, but really eccentric, very sweet. But she does have things that have to be followed to make our lives easier. My son as well, he's a little further into the spectrum as far as what other people get from him. His eye contact is limited. He'll talk if you talk about anime, if you talk about things he wants to talk about. So his conversationals and his engagement is a little more difficult than hers is. And I was married. I was married 20 years, and the stress that I was underwater with my children for years, suffered. I ended up with a divorce, which is a big deal in general. And then you put the autism in there where, like they're not much for talking on the phone and things of that nature. So that's a new chapter that I'm kind of getting to know. My daughter loves animals. So I have 3 dogs, 4 cats. We can't get enough of it, killing me softly with the animals. But it's what she does. It's something that she can give, and she feels that's her gift. So I want to make sure that I'm giving her all those opportunities to be exactly who she can be with the parameters that she put on herself. I don't put any parameters on them. whatever they want to do, whatever they want to say, wherever they want to go, I try to make sure that those opportunities are available.
Annette, I think that's critical, and that's wonderful because you understand that your children are individuals, and like every parent who may not, who may be a mother or a father of a child, they understand the differences between their children, and they know how to effectively parent them, encourage them, correct them. And especially for you, you've got to have a little more skills and intuitiveness and a higher level of discernment, because you've got to look at what's perceived to be normal. And then you have to, it has to run through your filter what you know about this disability. So I'm just wondering, when you first heard the diagnosis, you said it was a rough time. How have you been able to get to the point now where you can freely talk about it? What were some of your, how did you cope? What things did you do? What things have helped you to be able to manage and to accept this reality?
I really don't know. Like I live a pretty secluded life. Luckily, I do have some friends who will come to me. I'm not that active with my family because there's a lot of stereotypes that we had mentioned earlier, where like my mom would get really upset when my son would maintain eye contact. She felt like that was being disrespectful, them not answering back, things like that. So how I managed is online. I'm part of the medical field myself, so I get involved with whatever I can. The Children's Alliance, the Ohio Children's Alliance, has a lot of opportunities, and I just try to stay as involved as I can with other families who also have the same struggles as me. That school, Applied Behavioral Services, was a good resource for me, to be like, hey, I'm not the only person who does the same thing every day. I'm not the only person who had to start her career much later in life. And I have 4 kids. These are only 2 of them. So even as a bigger family, there's other struggles that we struggle with at home as well. It's not easy. I'm not going to try to paint it like there aren't days that I sit up and still wonder, do I need to get guardianship of my children? Are they going to be able to manage? What happens if something happens to me? Who's going to love my children? Who's going to care for them? Who's going to understand them? And I guess I'm just trusting the process. I'm trusting what I'm putting in place, and hoping for the best.
Well, you've got 2 other children. What are their ages, and how do they interact with your 2 children that have been diagnosed with autism?
Well, I have an older son who's 26.
Okay.
He actually has cerebral palsy. He had a traumatic brain injury when he was younger. So that's a whole nother dynamic that we get to bring into the
Another
mix.
show. I got you.
Yeah, but he's got a very kind heart, and he's really patient. And my other son is 21 and neurotypical, if you will. The only neurotypical in the house. He's limited, but I don't think he's limited with the engagement because he doesn't want it. He's just a young man, and he's doing whatever he does as a young man. And he's like, he does whatever he wants to do, and he does come into contact with them, specifically his brother more than his sister. They have a lot in common as far as gaming and all the stuff that comes with that gaming. And so they do have their conversations that get him out of his little bubble, which I really appreciate.
Dr. Moss, hearing Annette's story, how common is it for a family to have not one, but 2 members of their family diagnosed with this disability? And engaging families like this, what can we do as a community to further support them?
You know, it's not uncommon to have more than one child in the household, you know, and it speaks to the things that Annette just just mentioned, she's trying to manage four of her children, two of which, have ASD. So what does she do to, maintain her mental health? How does she get support when she wants to get a respite or a break? Who does she feel trustworthy to leave the kids with so that she can have a day out or a night out, or to be able to, get herself something to eat? Who is her sounding board? When she has questions about how to intervene with the kids, who does she run to kind of trade notes, other than the associations? Who are the other parents? So those are the things that we can do. I think that when we have organizations such as a church and other community activities, how can we structure activities so they can be more inclusive? So we know that a lot of the kids and adults with ASD may not be able to fully participate, but what kind of accommodations can we make such that they can feel safe and engage, and parents and other family members can also, be able to fully receive all this and involved with the activity? So those are some of the things to consider.
Annette, I'm wondering, were there times in which, you mentioned about one that you should give up guardianship to someone else. How often and how many times, and how do you deal? Do you ever just blame yourself? Do you ever ask yourself, what could I have done? And how do you process that when those thoughts come up?
I definitely did a lot more in the earlier stages than I did now. I got my tubes tied. I did not want to procreate anymore, because obviously, as Dr. Moss had said, there's no reason or thing that you can pinpoint to say this child is going to have this opportunity, if you will, to have these challenges. I really don't know much about how I perceive it now. It just seems pretty normal. Everything I do is just what I've always done. I definitely worry about the aftercare after I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's the new chapter that is on my plate currently.
Mm-hmm.
What to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had said, it's not just those two as well. I have an older son who stays with me, who I also worry about as well. So I often think, I think selfishly. I think I'm gonna buy a 4-family apartment building, and I'm just everybody's gonna live there. And my neurotypical son will live there, and he can make sure the bills are paid. And as long as everything maintains the same way, hopefully there would be no issues. I do have the community as far as Health Now and in Hamilton that steps in if necessary. I really just don't know yet what those steps are looking like. But I definitely made a conscious decision not to have any more children, even though I really did want a large family coming from someone who did not have a good family life. I just wanted my kids to be happy, feel loved, accepted. And I loved what you said earlier about, doing things in the community and including other children. Because one thing I definitely noticed is, like, even when you think my children are not listening because they're engaged in being introverted, they hear every single thing that's going on around them, every word, every syllable, every movement. And even if they don't participate, they are participating.
Well, I love that about you, because you generally accept your children for who they are, and you don't see them really as, you see what your life, that autism is just a part of your regular life, your regular day life, and you got past that point, whereas the shock is now just become ingrained, that it's and accepted as a part of your everyday life. I noticed that just like any child, persons that have been diagnosed with autism sometimes have skills, and so I want us to share this. Meet this young man. His name is Ronaldo, and then I'm going to come back and ask you about some of the special things your kids can do.
Okay.
This is my gallery.
Ronaldo is so giving. Sometimes he has difficulty expressing himself. He communicates with his artwork. Ronaldo was actually diagnosed later in life, not as a child, about 18. He had all the therapies, occupational, physical, and the special education classes. So he was in the right place. His gift superseded any disability because he never knew. We never, maybe in school, but we never emphasized the fact that you have a disability. He's the oldest, and he keeps everybody in check, and the house is in check. What more can I ask for?
I met Ronaldo 3.5 years ago on my first day here. So I only knew Ronaldo for maybe 3 minutes, and he draws a picture of me, comes back like 5 minutes later, and it has like every detail about what I'm wearing. He's like that amazing. He can just like remember what everyone's wearing and just put something together within minutes.
Every Friday he goes in. The interaction, the social aspect is good for him also. I see him growing as a person, as an individual.
Just be who you are. Don't take life too seriously.
So tell us a little about your children. And when I was watching that clip, I know that's the type of mom you are. So share with our audience some of the unique things that both of your children may possess.
That clip definitely touched me. I mean, I felt that that love, and I know what it feels like when you can see what's on the inside, and just the little bit that comes out, you really know what's going on. My daughter, super eccentric. I love how creative she is. She makes videos online. I don't know how she does all the effects and movements and things I could never do. I'm extremely analytical. She is not, and I just appreciate that so much in her. Just she dresses eccentric. She likes things that doesn't match, but they match to her, and she's just, that creative side is just amazing. I have zero creativity in me, zero. My son is total opposite. He's like me, so he does computers. He's got every game system that's out. He knows everything about how to make a game, like the computer coding of how to make games, how to fix computers. Yeah, I don't know anything about that either. But just the fact that, and I haven't taught them any of that. I can't teach anything in creativity. I try to. She laughs at me all the time. My daughter thinks I'm hilarious. I try so hard to be creative, and I failed miserably. But she loves me anyway because she knows I try.
Wow.
And I try to talk to my son about what he's doing. And when you say coding, I think of my type of medical coding. So my brain kind of clicks that way, which is totally not what he does. So he kind of finds his humor in what I do as well. But super smart. They have big things coming. I'm just looking forward to finding the avenues to get them exactly where they need to get so everybody else can see that.
That's awesome. Dr. Moss, hearing Annette, because really she's developed a strategy. She has a technique. She's intentional and purposeful on how she's engaging with her children. How can folks like us who are not in the home attempt to gauge? Because we know that sometimes, in many cases, socially is where those who are affected with this disorder are affected. What are some of the techniques or strategies that we can employ or to use to try to engage folks with this disorder socially on a social level?
I think that the biggest thing that I've found is patience. So engage with individuals as individuals, and as you engage with them, they'll allow you to know this is the path by which we can have a dialogue. This is the lane. So for one of her kids, it may be the discussion surrounding anime, as she mentioned with her son, right? If you bring up anime and some of the web books along with that, you can probably have conversations for hours, right?
Hours.
Yeah. So just trying to find that vein and being patient that as you're engaging, that you don't have the expectations that you're going to get the response that we are typically used to, right? But being patient to find out, okay, this is the groove. This is how we can reciprocate. It's more so not necessarily by the eye contact, but when I change the inflection of my voice or when I do something with my hands, then maybe that brings on a better level of engagement. So I think patience is the big thing. But as I mentioned before about, spectrum, another way to look at this as a spectrum condition is that there are many people, children and adults, who have challenges, right? And they try to maintain within those challenges, but they also have areas in which they greatly excel. These children, as she mentioned, listening and holding on to words and conversations and bits of knowledge for extended periods of time. Some kids at 25, I say kids at 25, but adults at 25, hold on to more information than I've learned and lost, because their brains are to some degree wired a little bit different. These very well circumscribed areas of interest. Some people are able to take that and continue to be great contributors in many facets of society. So the challenge to us who are not wired that way is how can we get into the potential of that? How can we create programming and services that they can render that really allows them to show their gifting? That's part of the challenge that I think that we have on this side of it.
Well, the critical thing is to understand is that children with autism become adults with autism.
That's right.
And sometimes they're shoved off or looked over as persons that may not be able to meaningfully contribute to society. Here's our final clip tonight I want to share that really speaks to that misconception and misnomer that folks who become adults may not be able to contribute to society.
What is autism?
Autism is a developmental disability.
Autism is a developmental disability.
Difficult disability.
I don't know.
I would say someone that is kind of to themselves, someone that are sometimes afraid of different lights and sounds.
So about 50% of every individual with autism doesn't have a job.
I would assume it's pretty high, but I'm not sure of the exact number, but I'm assuming that's high.
Estimates show that between 70 and 90% of autistic adults are unemployed.
That seems unfair.
Did you know that it was that high? Did you think it would be that high?
No.
Yeah.
And I think they deserve the same chance as everybody else.
say maybe 70%.
I don't think I know that either.
True or false? Autism is the fastest growing developmental disorder in the United States.
True.
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 People are always able to tell if someone is autistic simply by looking at their physical appearance.
False.
False.
False. I would say false.
False.
Autism spectrum disorder affects people of all races, ethnicities, and socioeconomic groups.
True.
I think true.
True.
And the final question is, true or false? 3.5 million people in the United States are on the autism spectrum.
True.
I would probably say true.
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 And by the way, myself and the entire production crew is on the autism spectrum themselves.
I did not know that. The world can treat people better with autism by treating them like they're normal.
What a way to conclude our time tonight. Annette, in just a brief few words, what would you like to say to those parents and children who live a life that includes autism?
I would say you're not alone, that there's a whole bunch of us out here, parents, children, mothers, husbands, wives, sisters, brothers. My line's always open, and most people who have different challenges that they deal with in their everyday life are very much open to listening. And I have tons of time that and tons of resources and tons of knowledge that I'm dying to pour into whoever would listen. So I would just say, I love you. And
thank you.
We're here.
Thank you. Dr. Moss, some final words. Share with us why we should trust diagnosis and trust and work with the system to help us in raising and supporting those children diagnosed with this disorder.
Yeah, not only do we, help find ways to help them to find relief for some of their challenges, but we want everyone to blossom, right? Yes. And if we can identify some of these challenges, and just like I want to be plugged in to be able to do what I want to do, everyone else has dreams and aspirations of things that they want to do and can meaningfully contribute. So this is a way to get it recognized, get treatment. There are interventions which are very effective in helping people move forward. So there's no shame, no guilt, or anything like that with this. This is allowing people to be their best selves, but they can only do that if we give them the help to be able to move forward.
Annette, thank you so much for being you. Thank you for just being real, down to earth, and being open and transparent, being genuine tonight. And we want to thank you. And I know that I've been helped just by hearing your story, and I've been made more aware to understand families that their life includes autism. And I want to thank you for sharing and making yourself available to help folks. And to our viewers, we want to thank you for on this Monday as we move into celebrating daylight savings times. We are appreciative. And for those viewers that will join us later this week, because we know that we have viewers that will view the broadcast as we rebroadcast it. I want to thank you, and I hope that you will take the information to help those that family have been impacted by autism, and that if you yourself, if your family has been impacted by autism, that this information will continue to help you on your journey, and you will have our continued prayers. Until next time, we want to encourage you and everyone to feel better, become better, and live better. Till next time, good night, everyone.
Good night.